Hello students, welcome to this video on Time Machine. I'm going to play the cello part for you and talk a little bit about how to practice the different aspects of this piece. Since this is a medley of different tunes from the different musical periods, I'm putting a table of contents in the description. So just look down there if you want to skip ahead to either the Baroque or the classical or the Romantic or the Jazz era. Okay, but we're going to start at the beginning with the Time Machine theme itself that starts the piece. Remember that we have F natural in this piece. The key signature is G major, F1 sharp, F sharp. But throughout this piece, especially in the Time Machine, our time travel music, there's a lot of accidentals. So in the beginning, the E and F natural half step. You must remember that that's a second finger. All right. Remember, students, when you're starting this thing, we've talked about this many times, this string wiggle. All right, making sure your bow is into the string so that right when the downbeat comes, all right, you're ready to go there. In measure 7, and they put the X there to remind you of the extension we have. In measure 7, D sharp. Okay. Then back to first position. Then in measure 11. This is second finger down here, this B flat. All right, so some of these notes, how can I make sure that I'm practicing them correctly? This is my favorite metronome to use. This is a Seiko metronome. You can look there. All right, my absolute favorite. I'm going to put it on, let's say, a B flat down here. Yeah, there's my B flat. And I can go through the piece. Okay. To practice some of these notes that we haven't played a lot in class. Same with the D sharp. So mine was a little flat, so I need to put my finger down a little higher when I go up there. That's better. Students, if you'll think of it in an extension, it will be much more in tune. Instead of trying to shift back and play just that finger back there in half position, all right? If you'll reach back with your first finger here, leaving my fourth finger down, because we're so used to playing the extension and reaching back there, I think it'll be more in tune if we reach back there for the D sharp. And then, of course, coming back to first position, all right, to play that stuff. And that is our time travel music. Now, time travel music, while we're talking about it, does change over at measure 50. But so that we go in order, we'll talk about that after the classical period. So after our first set of time travel music, we get to the Baroque era. Then it repeats piano. That's what the dash means. All right. So in the Baroque era, we have terraced dynamics, meaning no gradual change between dynamics. So that's when they put in their forte and then piano in the next measure between 17 and 18. They really do mean to play it all forte and then all piano in those two measures, all right? The dash at measure 14 means play it forte the first time and play it piano the second time, all right? And that is the Baroque era. Then it goes back into the Time Machine theme. In the classical era, all right? And let me mention all this. Mr. Meyer's suggested tempo is 1/16 for the chord note. So throughout all of this, all right, make sure the metronome. Maybe you're not playing it at 1/16 yet, but you can start slower and work your way up to that. In the classical era, and the reason I get the metronome out now is that it's really important that you practice this hooked bowing with the metronome. I'm going to slow it down here to 90. And I'm going to practice just my G scale with this hooked bowing. Is going to go the same direction, but I'm going to re-articulate the note. That's why you have the dots over the notes, but then you also see that they are slurred. All right, in slow motion, what's happening is I pull the bow and then stop, and then I start again, all right, to re-articulate the note. And this goes for any of the instruments. And then once I've done that on the scale and really feel comfortable with the hooked bowing, then two, three. Okay, and then I would think about speeding it up here. Also, down here in measure 42, I would practice that for sure with the metronome, all right, where it says spiccato, which means off the string. I'm going to make since off the string stroke is an advanced bow stroke, I'm going to make a separate video for that, students, and talk just about how to practice and what goes into the off the string stroke, right, so that you can watch that separately. All right, I'll post a link down in the description for that. All right, but it does have some dynamics. We have crescendo to forte. Then it's piano and spiccato section. There's another crescendo to forte. I want to make sure we do those. And notice as we go through the different time periods, we get more and more dynamics, more and more different rhythmic contrast as we go through. So here's the classical era by itself. Then at 50, as I mentioned earlier, the time machine theme, our time travel music changes slightly. And students, make sure you are holding, and we're going to talk about this more in the Romantic era coming up, make sure you are holding all the notes for their full value, okay? That whole note there that comes in measure 54, making sure we're holding it out for 4 counts, even though we do have a retake. 1, 2, 3, 4. Really important that we hold those up. Now, in the Romantic era, yes, making sure that we hold the whole notes for the correct number of beats, half notes for the correct number of beats, and that we do all the dynamics. So I'm going to cut my metronome on again here. And make sure you practice the dynamics with the metronome. That's really important to make sure that during the softer sections, we're not slowing down. All right, I want to make sure we're keeping the tempo going through those. Now, in 66, we have the extension again, just like the D sharp that we did back in measure 7. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to reach our first finger back at measure 66. And notice in the Romantic era, quintessential, change from classical era to Romantic era is that we have more dynamics, and the dynamics happen faster. So we have a crescendo to forte over just one measure and then back down to piano in just the next measure. Okay, lots of different contrast in this Romantic section. In 66, also the articulation, we have long notes. That's what the tenuto lines under the notes are. They want you to connect them. And then there's an accent up there at 70. The SIM means simile. Same thing it does mean in English class, means the same, all right? So what they mean is they've given you a style with these tenutos and they want you to connect the notes. The SIM just means keep doing that. Keep doing the same idea, and it saves confusion on the page, a little less ink there, all right? Just keep playing them long and connected. All right, so here's the Romantic era. Now we get to the jazz era, all right, and it says swing the eighth notes, all right? This is where we're going to have this long, short pattern. And again, I would practice it on the scale. All right, just to get the feel for it, because they're written as just regular straight eighth notes, but then we make them sound with this long, short pattern. Again, metronome, because pizzicato always wants to rush. And so I'm going to practice this pizz section with the metronome. Some notes in there, the F natural, B flat that we've talked about before. All right, and then when I get over to the arco section there at 91, I swing the eighth notes. Bum, ba, bum, bum. All right, those four notes there in 94, it's a little different than the middle of the piece because it's at the phrase. All right, it's not long, short, same thing repeated, all right? I would sing it to yourself the way I just did. That really helps with the rhythm if you just sit there in your practice room, bum, 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 and say the rhythm out loud. It's very, very helpful. All right, so here's the jazz era. We're back to 95, we're back to the Baroque era. So what happens at the end of this piece is it's going to go through each period of music for 2 measures, all right, and then end with our time machine theme. All right, and if anybody wants to alternative fingering down at 102, you could do this down here in 4th position. All right, and gives it a really fun sound big sound there at the end. Okay, that's the way I would perform it. All right, so that's Time Machine, and I'm going to put a couple of links to different things down in the description, including the table of contents, and I'm just